We're going to be recording this session, so I just want to make sure everyone knows that. If you do ask questions out loud, then we will be able to see your faces. And if not, you can always chat questions to our amazing room monitor, Annie. So my name is Christina Winstead, and I'm the Assistant Director for Outreach at the Washington Student Achievement Council, and I work with the 12th year campaign. I love financial aid. Those of you guys who know me know this is my favorite topic, favorite season, not just because of financial aid. Like, it starts with financial aid opening and it ends like on a day where you can go to a random person's house and get free candy by knocking on their door. October is the best. And so I get very excited about financial aid because, and this is why, financial aid is literally what changed my whole trajectory. Some financial aid officer who I wish I knew their name sat down with me for 30 minutes and changed everything that I was doing by finding me financial aid, by helping me with the application. When we are serving students, we may not see the trajectory that they're on. This is a world of planting gardens we never see, but we know the impact this has for students. And for me, it turned my life from being a sandwich artist, which is code for Subway, to getting paid to do what I love every single day. And that's why I love it, because I want students to have the same access that I did. And I just wish I had known that that one person's 30-minute investment of their life completely changed mine. Because I was going to the school to drop out, and they were like, let's get you some financial aid, let's figure this out. And I had a lot of misconceptions and myths in my head about financial aid that our students do too. And so my favorite thing is to dispel those and serve students in this way. So today we're going to go over just a little bit of basics about financial aid. I know we have people from all different states here, and so some of this information is going to be Washington specific, but I encourage you, when I talk about Washington state aid, to always make sure you're up to date on your own state aid packages and opportunities. We're going to do updates for the 2021-2022 application. We're going to talk about Financial Aid Advising Day, which is a new requirement in Washington state, but I know that this might be some other things that other states are looking at too, so please feel free to use any of the resources that we provide today. We're going to talk about ways to engage and support these students in this process while we're virtually learning. Then we're going to talk about some best practices, student next steps, and resources. I have lots of resources for y'all. And when I say resources, everything's free. I'm super frugal, like the most frugal woman of Thurston County. I'm willing to take challengers. So everything I offer you will be free, no cost. So basic financial aid information and updates, just so we're all on the same page, because I don't know where everyone's starting at for financial aid. Financial is an umbrella. We love our umbrellas in Washington. Maybe not to actually use them. We do a lot of jackets with hoods over the top. But when we talk about things, especially financial aid, we like to look at it under an umbrella because it covers so many things. And a lot of people think financial aid is just one application and one and done, and that's not the case. So financial aid covers that topic: grants, scholarships, loans, and work study. And so we know that grants, these are income-based. There can be federal, state, and institutional grants. We've got scholarships, so many scholarships. I don't know about y'all, but I have found that last year had so many people that didn't apply for scholarships, so many scholarship committees that were like, do you know anyone who's going to apply for this? There was a lot of unawarded scholarships out there, especially in the spring last year. And so I really want to make sure students understand their opportunities with scholarships. Income-based loans, as well as federal and private loans, are available to students. And then work study, which is an opportunity for them to work typically on or off campus. They are federal, sometimes state and institutional based, and they're income-based. So where does this money come from? The federal government. This can be used at typically most schools that qualify for aid across the nation. States also have their own state aid specific to residents in their state. Colleges have their own funding, and organizations as well. So a lot of different places that money's coming from. Some examples of federal financial aid include the Pell Grant, federal work study. I want to say this about work study. If your students, they get 3 options for work study. And when they see the words work and study together, they think, this is a bummer. Why would I work and study? Hardest of passes. But what really is happening there is they're getting an opportunity to be able to build their resume, get paid for work that they're doing, and also find ways to be involved on campus. Those on-campus jobs are amazing. And so I encourage students, if they pick, they go the 3 options of yes, no, I don't know if they want to do work study on their application. If they say no or I don't know, there are some institutions that will not consider them for work study if they say I don't know. I tell students, say yes to work study, you can always decline it. And if you were a work study student, share your experience, because that's why I tell students is like, I was working jobs not on campus before I got a work study job. And then all of a sudden I got this work study job and they never called me in during my class for a shift because no one showed up. They knew I was a student first and foremost, and they supported me in that. And that was critical to me. But also then I got to explore student services, and I fell in love with serving students like in that position. So it also led me to what I love. Unsubsidized and subsidized student loans. We want to make sure students understand that those loans are things they have to pay back. And then parent loans. There is a maximum of the like year to year that they can receive in parent loans, but there's no overall maximum in parent loans. So I had a parent call me last year with about $140,000 in student debt of parent loans because she was receiving parent loans and paying for her students to go to school, and she had lost her job. And thank goodness we were able to do it, like get her connected with the college and do a financial aid adjustment based upon her current income. But she's like, but I can just get these loans waived in bankruptcy now, can I? And I'm like, that's very, like, it's like the unicorn of bankruptcy loan. Like, I have not seen any discharged. You have to get a specific lawyer for that. And so, unfortunately, I've heard that as people's plans. Well, I'll just declare bankruptcy. I'm like, these things follow you. So parents need to be very careful about the amount of loans they're taking and be mindful of the overall amount. So this is Washington specific. For those of you who are not in Washington, this is what it looks like for us. Our Washington opportunity pathways include the Washington College Grant. It used to be called the State Need Grant. This is near and dear to my heart because State Need Grant is what paid for me to go to school and gave me that opportunity. And we've expanded that opportunity for more programs, more income levels. This also now includes approved apprenticeships. There's a lot of opportunities for students through the Washington College Grant. The College Bound Scholarship is a scholarship students sign up for in middle school. It's a commitment of funds. When they graduate high school, they have to meet their pledge, be income eligible, and it covers the highest rate of public tuition, some fees, and a small book allowance. There's state work study in addition to federal work study. Passport to Careers is a program for our youth in care. So if we have foster youth, we have opportunities for them while they're in high school to learn more about education, but also supports when they graduate high school. And then the Opportunity Grant. We also manage our state application for financial aid. So there's two applications in Washington. We're going to talk about that in a second. First, we're going to talk about the FAFSA. The FAFSA, there are three ways to apply: the website, the app, and the paper application. The quickest ways to apply are going to be those first two. If you have encountered the dreaded, you've encountered an error on the web for FAFSA where like it's all of a sudden you're kicked out and you're like, ah, and it keeps happening, especially on the website. I found that the phone app is still working, even though maybe the website is crashing. And so if you're working with students, like a bunch of students, if you have for example, for me, 50 kids in one room and it keeps crashing. I had all the students transfer over to their phones and we were able to finish that event last year when we could still be in person. So it is a nice tool to have for students, especially in remote learning. Not everybody's going to have access to maybe like a Chromebook that is Wi-Fi enabled, but they may have access to a phone that is. And so that phone app, the biggest thing they want to remember is if you haven't updated the My Federal Student Aid app this year, the 2021-2022 application won't be on there. You have to go back in and update your application. And so once you update that on your phone, you'll see the new application. Paper FAFSAs they are wonderful for students that specifically, I use these for students who are incarcerated. If you're working with incarcerated youth, please email me. I would love to, I don't care what state you're from. My goal is to make sure that all students have these opportunities. And so if you're working with incarcerated youth, I make college access care packages for incarcerated youth that have paper applications. I take our workbooks and I remove all the staples because you can't have those at some of the facilities. And I bought a sewing machine that is an industrial one from a garage sale. And I just do like sew up the spine and I send out kits out to students so that they have access to these. So if you're working with youth who are currently incarcerated, please let me know. There's a lot of misconceptions about aid for that population. So those are the three application opportunities for the FAFSA. This is what the FAFSA page looks like. It hasn't changed much. And then the WASPA. In Washington State, if a student doesn't qualify for the FAFSA, we want them to assess themselves for the WASPA. And the WASPA is our state application for financial aid. And so this is a great opportunity for students, especially those who meet House Bill 1079 requirements. If the student does not know which application they should do, never make an assumption. Go ahead and have them go. In Washington State, this is more Washington State specific, but if you have a state application yourself, for us, we have students go right to our WASPA page and assess themselves for which application they're supposed to do. Ask them about 5 questions. By the time they're done, it tells them they should either do the FAFSA or the WASPA. There will be some students where it says you don't qualify for either, but don't worry, I've got resources for them too at the end of this presentation. Okay, when to apply for financial aid. Again, I tell people, like, when things start looking like pumpkin spice and everything nice out there, it's time to start thinking about financial aid. So it opens October 1st every single year. We encourage students to apply early. We know that that can impact sometimes those institutional aid packages. The class of 2021 is going to complete that 2021-2022 FAFSA or WASPA. Students are going to say that's super futuristic, but it's literally the years that they're going to college. And they're going to use their 2019 tax information. Now, as I say 2019 tax information, the biggest question I get is, 2019 was awesome, but 2020 has been real rough, especially financially for families. If their income has decreased, what they want to do is make sure that they do an appointment with their financial aid office. They're going to apply for aid, and then they're going to connect with their financial aid office of the college that they're applying to. And they can also use Student Swift as a way to appeal their financial aid process with the financial aid office. And so Student Swift is this new system. It's really cool. And what it does is it allows them to fill out a template and then use that to apply for an appeal for financial aid. Also, your students may be selected for verification. Verification is a random and standard practice. It's to clarify information. Students have to pay attention to requests for information from schools and respond as soon as possible. Financial aid officers are there to help. I know that I've had a lot of people reach out about verification. I've had students last year that didn't go to college because of verification, especially if you're in Washington State. If you have students struggling with that verification process, they need to reach out to their college as soon as possible if they can't get access to those documents. I know last year the IRS was not sending paper copies of tax transcripts and not receiving the paper requests. If your student is struggling, have them reach out to the college. If you want to do some sort of verification engagement with your students, especially with 12th year sites, I am happy to help you put together something to engage students. I'm also going to be putting together an event to engage students who are selected for verification to provide assistance with that process later this winter. This is one of my near and dear topics. I know a lot of you have emailed me the horror stories and the sad stories of students who could not navigate this process. And it breaks my heart because these are students that we know they want to go to school. They have applied for financial aid and they are struggling to get those documents that allow them to be verified. They also use this to clarify information. I had a student, and you guys may have seen this as well. I had a student that they listed that their parents made $32,000. And so the student, when they put down their student income, they're like, if my parents made $32,000, so did I, because what my parents were family. So what my parents make, I make. And so the student then listed 32 grand. And the financial aid officer went, an 18-year-old made 32 grand last year. I'm in the wrong profession. Let me find out what's going on here. And so what happened was they selected the student for verification. The student went, oh, no, I didn't work last year. My parents made that, but we're a family, we share. So it's about those common definitions. And they were able to clarify it, bring the income down to the correct level, and the student was then eligible for more grants. Okay, these are the most common financial aid mistakes that I am finding this year. Legal information, making sure in the FAFSA specifically that they're using their name as listed on their social security card and that they're using their correct social security number. You do not want them to make up this number. I know I've had students go, well, I don't know that, I'll just make it up. We are doing a application that's their first typically federal document. And we want to make sure that it's accurate. Using the correct FAFSA or WASPA year, so that 2021-2022 application, students may fill out the year because there's two available. They may fill out the year that they're currently in high school. And if that happens, this is what I tell students. Congratulations, you just completed what I like to call the practice FAFSA. And same with the WASPA. If they do the wrong one, now we're going to have you go back in and do a renewal. So you're going to see what it's like to do this application next year. And then they can see that some of that information imports. And using that correct tax year information, using correct parent information for dependent students. So making sure that they're not using a legal guardian or somebody else. And so this can be really challenging. And I just saw a question come up about not having enough spaces for names. As someone who has a long name, when you are filling out the FAFSA or your FSA ID, what you're going to do for students like that who have a longer name than the number of characters that you're allowed to provide is have them put as much of their name as it will fit. And then they can submit it that way. Because typically they're verifying from the first 5 letters of the name, but we want to make sure that you put as much of the name as will fit, and then that will go ahead and allow them to create their FSA ID. Another issue that I'm finding is very common is parents not using zeros, parents who do not have a social security number. So this is important for mixed status families. If they don't have a social security number, they need to put zeros in as their social. Now, what's going to happen when they do that is it's going to say, oh, you have an error. The student's going to have to click next, sometimes even re-enter the zeros, and it's going to say it's an error again. You have to do it 3 times for it to move on to the next page. What ends up happening is the first time the parent puts zeros in, it'll throw that error and they'll go, oh, they must want my ITIN number. Okay, I'll just put that in. The problem is then when they put the ITIN number in there, it ends up creating an actual error. So they want to keep the zeros in there and click next 3 times, and it'll move them on to the next page. And the last one is not finishing the financial aid process. So whether it's not sending the signatures in or actually not hitting submit. I had that happen quite a bit last year. Here are the big changes to the 2021-2022 FAFSA. Part of it is this is some extra access for parents to bring information over from one student to another. So it's a little bit easier if a parent has multiple children going to college. And on the application, it will say, do you have another student going to college, and they import that information. So that helps a bit. If the student answers questions a certain way, there's linked logic. So Schedule 1 questions not only can be moved in from the DRT, but sometimes it won't ask them that if they don't have not listed that they have one. And so it's nice that it's coming in directly from the DRT, because that was challenging last year. So those Schedule 1 challenges. And then that My Student Aid app, they're updated it this year. So just making sure students update that information. The other big change that I'm excited about is they've changed parent information language. It no longer says, like when you fill out information for parent 1, it used to say, like if you selected mother, it would automatically select father for the opposite parent. Now they've changed it just to your other parent. So it is more reflective of our family situations. Oh, and I see a question about FSA IDs with 2 last names. When you're making an FSA ID, if the parent has 2 last names, it's whatever's listed on their social security card. So however it's listed out. So whatever name is first out of those 2 names, if there's a hyphen in there, they put it in. If there's not, they put them all together. The other one is, the extended tax deadline was like less than a month ago for 2019. So we do have some families that missed paying their taxes this year. Totally fine. I have families I'm working with right now who are actually filing their taxes and doing their application afterwards, but you can say that you're going to file. It'll say you've missed the deadline. You just click OK, and then they can estimate their information with their W-2s, and then they can update it afterwards. There are multiple options for parent signatures. So parent's signature is one of the challenges that we find in this process. They can sign with their FSA ID. They can print a signature page, but we know not all families have printers, and we're going to talk about that in a second. Or they can submit without a signature. If your families are having access issues with printers, this is one of the most common questions I'm getting asked right now. So if they don't have a printer at home, one option is to check with your local libraries. So some of the local libraries are having print days where you send the files, they print them, and you can pick them up from the library. So they are an amazing resource, as some of these libraries are allowed to have 25% capacity at this point. They've been allowing people to come in and do that. Some schools have had a printing day where the students who need a signature page have contacted the counselor, and they print them and done pickup in one day. The one that I like the most is submit the application without signatures. And then they send the student a paper student aid report that has a space for signatures for the parent. What they can then do is have the parent sign, and they can return that student aid report. I think it's like this color orangish. And so the only thing there is access-wise is access to an envelope and a stamp. So for some students that are struggling with this process, I know some of the schools are allowing students to send stuff from, like the school's willing to send those items for the students. So maybe sending home envelopes on the lunch pickup buses. That's what I've had some schools do, is they send home envelopes with lunch pickup saying, if you're a senior and you need a signature page sent, please put it in here, address it appropriately. They want to make sure they address the signature page or whatever the student aid report on the address that's listed on there, as opposed to Googling the address, because they changed the PO box that it's supposed to go to based upon the year of financial aid. So they want to make sure they're using the correct address, and they just return it sometimes through the lunch pickup. The other issue is the 45-day rule. The 45-day rule is that students have 45 days of inactivity in an application before they wipe the application of information. Doesn't mean they wipe their FSA ID, but if you have students who start this application, they started on October 1st, got really excited about it, got stuck and haven't touched it by mid-November, they will lose the information they've already put in there. So it's important once they start to keep going through the application. And sometimes what I encourage is after the first month of applying, to just send a blanket email to all students. If you've started your application but haven't finished it yet, please make sure that you're working towards that and that you don't leave your account inactive for 45 days. And then I love this resource, Who's My Parent for Financial Aid? I've been sending this to all the students I work with to allow them to determine who their parent is, because this can be, even if you're doing in-person events, I give these out to students beforehand because these are questions that are very sensitive. For some students, this is very fresh. And I know because last year I had a student that who's your parent for financial aid? They saw this and she just started crying because their parents had gotten divorced like 3 days early. It was the final divorce thing. And so these are very, sometimes emotionally triggering questions. Also, it's for financial aid purposes. So reminding them, this is for financial aid, because students will say, wait, these are the people who are my family. This is who my parent is. And it may not align with what the definition of financial aid is. So always telling students, like, these are the financial aid definitions, and this is what they're looking for, but we also acknowledge who your family is. So if they have, if they're in a legal guardianship, they're going to be considered independent. They will not put their legal guardian's financial information on there. They're living in a situation where maybe they're living with an aunt, an uncle, a grandparent. They're not going to use those family members' income information. They're going to assess themselves through dependency status to see if they qualify for dependent or independent. And if they have McKinney-Vento determination, then they also will be considered independent. So we know that student errors in their applications are a big challenge, especially in this virtual time. So my concern is errors because I get to watch the error data. So if you're in Washington and you have access to your financial aid portal, you can actually go in your portal and see at the end of the month who has errors, who submitted their application, has been processed, who's missing signatures. And I encourage you to engage with your students who have errors to help them through the process of fixing them. Students can also see the errors in their application. They'll get an email. They can see those errors by logging back in and starting a correction. If you are a counselor at one of our 12th year sites, I encourage you, reach out to me. I'm doing appointments. If you have students with errors and you're like, I don't know how to fix these, just make a list of all the questions you have. We do a 30-minute appointment and I go through and I help you. I also will offer some opportunities for students one-on-one for those real challenging errors. Excuse me. This is what our portal looks like for those of you who have not been in it. If you're a Washington State counselor and you're working with students, you want to check with your school to see if they have a data sharing agreement signed with us and on file, and you can request access to the FAFSA completion portal. Okay, Financial Advising Day. This is a new requirement for Washington State. It's ESV 6141, and basically it's that schools need to provide financial aid information to all of their students, and that those requirements are going to be in their high school and beyond plan. So there's a new page to the high school and beyond plan this year that has to do with financial aid. So it includes having a financial aid advising day. The really cool thing I'm excited about is, you know how award letters can be kind of just all over the place. Every school is different. They're going to have to align those a little bit. So our work in the spring is going to be a lot easier. And this includes things like the high school beyond plan has to include information on opportunity grant, other opportunities. It's just basically making sure that all students understand funding opportunities in Washington State. This also includes a financial aid calculator that we have recently created, and Annie's going to start putting some links in the chat with some of these resources for you. With the financial aid calculator, they're going to align those award letters so it's easier for them to compare award letters. And then Financial Aid Advising Day. These are days or days, depending on your school, where districts with high schools have to have some sort of advising day between September 1st and December 1st. Now, If you're from a Washington State school and you're like, wait, are we doing this? And you have seniors, you can always reach out to me. I'm doing appointments with counselors to kind of walk through the requirements of the bill and how we can help support you as a 12th year campaign. So districts need to provide this information before December 1st. And so you'll need to host a financial aid advising day with your students. It's a lot like your financial aid nights that you've had. And that's harder because we're virtual, and we're going to talk more about how we're doing these virtually. There's a lot of resources. We spent all summer working on resources that are virtual resources for your schools. And so you don't have to reinvent the wheel. If you're looking for a resource, connect with us to see if we have it. But we'll also have some really cool resources on our 12th year campaign page. And then we've aligned our 12th year campaign work to align with the requirements of this bill and the high school and beyond plan, so you have those supports. And we are offering statewide financial events. We're going to talk about that as one of the strategies for financial aid completion virtually. I encourage you, if you have not worked on Financial Aid Advising Day yet, talk to your team at your school. How are we addressing this? How can you partner with your schools, other organizations, CBOs? I mean, I'm doing a lot of work where we're connecting with libraries, we're connecting with other colleges, other community-based organizations to build this huge net of support to help students complete their applications, especially during this time where we're virtual. Making a plan. So how are you going to inform? What are the things you need to inform them of? And how are you going to inform families? So not just the students, but how do you make sure that the parents and caregivers understand this process? Because we know that's who's going to be supporting them. And then financial aid, I know it says December 1st, but we know financial aid is a cycle that goes on all year. I had students that were applying for financial aid this summer who just decided this summer, like, actually, I do want to go to college. So we know that this is a process, and through the financial aid cycle that you're going to have students who are really excited right now about it, but some students may not come to you until later on in the year and say, actually, I do want to apply for financial aid. It's never too late for them to do that process. They want to check with their schools if they've missed a deadline. But even then, I tell students, you know, you want to make sure you apply for financial aid. So supporting them through the cycle, which includes verification and completing with errors, and then selecting a school and navigating their award letter. So engaging families and students in this process. Social media has been a big one. So what platforms is your school or institution using? So what do you have access to already? And then think about who's the audience of that platform. So we know that some platforms are more used by parents versus students. So, you know, if it's students, maybe you're going to see if you can do TikTok. And if it's parents, maybe you're going to use Facebook. You know, maybe you're going to use Instagram for both. But I have found that it is important to understand the audience of your platform before pushing out the messaging. So when you have messaging for parents, using that on Facebook seems to work really well. Using Facebook events, I'm finding that schools that create a Facebook event, families will talk in the event page, and sometimes they will tag their parent friends to come to that event. So having an event page is free to do. It's super easy. And we have graphics that you can use, and there's other toolkits. So NCAN has toolkits, and then they will be in the chat as well. Federal Student Aid also has social media toolkits available. But it's really assessing, what are your students using? What are your families using? What do you have access to? And then if you don't have access to being able to provide your own created content, sometimes it's just retweeting and sharing content from other sources like Federal Student Aid and NCAN and other groups that are doing this work. So virtual events. What I'm really finding is my virtual events have been higher attended than any of my in-person events, which makes me feel bummed because I bring candy to my in-person events. I try to make it as fun as humanly possible because I know maybe not everyone is excited about financial aid as I am, but my goal is by the time they leave, maybe they will be. And so I was really surprised to see we have a lot of families attending our financial aid events, and I've heard that from other schools too. And part of it is partnerships. Doing these events as a district versus one school seems to really have a larger impact. And I'm finding that there are more families who are attending that wouldn't have attended. And they've told me that I wouldn't have attended this, but you guys picked a time. Or another great way is recording it and sending it out later. So if you can't make it, no problem, but inviting them, say, hey, we know you can't make it, that's okay. Here's a recording of the presentation you can watch in your own time. Not all students will have access to, maybe not the technology, but the bandwidth to attend events. And you want to be mindful of how are you going to serve those students. And so making sure that the students who maybe have access to a device, but not to the actual Wi-Fi to get on to a financial aid event, is sometimes it's sending flash drives home to students. Sometimes it's preloading things for them so they have access. Q&A sessions I have found have been critical in financial aid events this year. It has allowed parents to norm their questions, and same with students. When I get a lot of like, I have a real dumb question. Number one, it's just information you don't have. It's not a dumb question. It's financial aid. It's a confusing world. I've been doing this for 20 years. I'm still confused sometimes. So it's okay to ask all the questions you want. But when one parent asks a question, all of a sudden it's the first one that will ask it. Sometimes I put a dummy question in there. I'll have someone else plant a question. Once one question gets asked, then the floodgates open. And I didn't know that you had that same question. I was thinking that too. It really norms like the information, and that it's okay if you don't know all of this about financial aid, but we're going to help you get there. When you're having a public event like this on Zoom, I encourage you to tell your students to change their names to initials. This is still a public space. You want to make sure they may accidentally share private information in chat. So letting them know ahead of time to change their names. I always have them change their name to their initials. And if I'm doing an event through multiple schools, the initials of their school. That way we can kind of see who's from what school. And then I encourage them to directly private chat a volunteer in an event. So what we do is we change our names very easily. As you see in our event today, all our room monitors, it's listed at the first thing. So when you chat to somebody, you can find the room monitor very easily. If you're having a virtual event, making sure that you easily identify your counselors, your volunteers, having them put volunteer or counselor first and then their name allows it for parents who maybe don't know who works at the school fully or who a volunteer is to be able to connect with them directly. I also encourage you to have one-on-one breakout rooms, just like I encourage in live in-person events to have counseling offices available, because for some students, and I've had this happen before, we're asking very private information. And I've also had students discover in this process that they're undocumented. And we don't want them to process that in front of their peers. We want them to have a separate space. Same with these events. You want to have breakout rooms for one-on-ones, just in case students have questions. Also, this may be times where students, because we're asking about their housing, may talk more. I have students who will tell me all about their housing situation that they won't talk to their counselor about because I'm a stranger. So having an extra space that someone can go to have that private information discussed with a one-on-one is important. And the big thing with the questions too is like sometimes you'll have students who will accidentally ask the whole group, and then I just remind them. So you're gonna want to try to private chat for those. Some of those questions are a little more private. Also, starting the session by telling them they're not going to be sharing their social security numbers with people. I had a student who's like, I'll just give you my social. I'm like, never use those words again. Like that's like, oh, no, no, no. You want to make sure that you are not giving out your social to anyone. You're putting it into the form directly. So for Washington State, this is what we've done virtually to virtually engage students in financial aid. We've decided to hold statewide financial aid events, regional financial aid events, as well as school events with the colleges. So our statewide events have been open to all students. Anyone, like I'm like, if you have a pulse and you want to go to college next year and you want financial aid, come on over. We're happy to help. We have volunteers that I am so grateful for our volunteers. We've reached out across the state to different colleges, to different organizations, and people have answered the call. And the only way we could do this work, because the 12th year campaign is me and another person part-time. That's it for the whole state. So we can't do these events by ourselves, but our volunteer pool comes from the colleges. It comes from community-based organizations that we've trained in the past. Some volunteers are retired counselors who miss their students and retired teachers as well. So figuring out who that volunteer base is going to be for you. But for us, we were very fortunate to have schools support us in this work because they know that we need to provide these opportunities. We have found a best practice is having students register in advance. That way we know, because we can ask questions in Zoom, like, do you know about financial aid? Are you a college-bound student? We can ask them some specific questions to understand their knowledge base level. In addition, it gives us counts so we know how many volunteers we'll need for that day. Also, then I can engage. I'll see some of my students I've been working with. I know you guys miss your students. And so for me, I'm like, oh, the student's coming. And I'll send them some encouraging emails. Hey, remember working with you last year? I'm so excited you're a senior this year. Can't wait to help you with your financial aid. I'll see you on Saturday. And then we decided like to have these statewide events, but also then to co-host events with schools. So schools have been co-hosting these events with us to have breakout rooms specific for their schools. So sometimes it's about having a large event and then breaking the schools out by breakout rooms so that they can work with their counselors directly. We also decided to do some regional partnership events. So this is one that we did last week. We had 373 students register, and we had about 283 people attend. And that was partially because we had anyone remember the giant windstorm that came through last week? All these gray hairs are from me trying to hope my power wouldn't go out during that. And so we had all of these schools, 16 schools attended. We partnered with Futures Northwest, which is an organization that does that work in the area, to serve the entire Whatcom and Skagit area. Each school had their own breakout room. And what ended up happening is they were allowed to kind of have their breakout room as they wanted. So I've had schools do this event and do breakout rooms where every 30 minutes they do a raffle for college swag. Because we know that there's college swag. Sometimes it's like if you have gear up swag, sometimes that works. But having a raffle every 30 minutes. Okay, you guys, we're gonna take a second, stretch, move around a little bit. We're gonna put you all on the wheel of names. And okay, so-and-so, you want a prize? Go ahead and message me your address and we'll send it to you. Or we'll make sure it gets on the bus for lunch pickup. So there's some really cool ways of engaging students throughout it. And sometimes you can do it for free by using things like college swag or other things that you might have around. Other schools have been able to use the compensated yearbooks that they get as a school, using those free comp books that they get for yearbooks, and they've been raffling those off. So that's been really cool for the students who attend. One of the schools at this event, one of the smaller schools actually they asked me, who's coming to the event virtually? And they sent pizzas home to the families that were going to attend the event so they could have a pizza financial aid day. We know how much food is important in this. Other schools have done food packs sent home to families so that they have some snacks to eat during the event. And so this was a really well-attended event, even with that windstorm and power outages in the entire Whatcom Skagit region. We offered the event in both English and Spanish, so we made sure that the posters matched the languages that were available. If you're in Washington State and you want to co-host an event with us, some of them are already full, but if you're interested in co-hosting an event with us, we'd love to have you. You just want to register as a 12th year site. Then you'll pick the dates, the date that you want to co-host with your school. Co-hosted schools will get a poster with their logos, much like the one you saw before, but also we want to make sure you designate the staff that are going to be there, because this is what will happen if you don't have school staff at an event. When I'm letting people in the room, I'm a stranger, and stranger danger exists online. Thank goodness they believe this. The students are like, they'll come into the lobby, they'll see me and they go, "You're not my counselor." Bloop, bloop. They'll come back in, bloop, bloop. No, bloop, bloop. So if they don't see somebody they know right away, sometimes they're like, nope. So you want to make sure that whoever's entering students into the room, that you have a counselor, a familiar face to greet them. And so that's why we encourage you to have we want your school staff to be there. And then also we encourage you, if you're doing virtual events this year and you're kind of collaborating, still invite your volunteers from your volunteer pool from the past. I've had several volunteers who volunteered at other schools in the past reach out to me to say, I saw my school had an event, but no one contacted me. And the school was like, oh, we just didn't want to bother anyone. And so I encourage you, it's easy to lose a volunteer pool if you don't engage with them. And then schools, anybody can order 12th year materials for 12th year sites. You can order your materials for students. Schools have been putting together packets that go home on the lunch buses that families can have. And then creating that action plan. So who's going to be involved? We have pre-recorded trainings for those who want more information about financial aid. And then what we do is we encourage them to kind of have a post-event action plan. We also encourage, we say financial aid advising day, but really we know that this is not something we can cram into one day. So I created a sample financial aid advising week, and this has been a great way to engage students with videos, with resources and quizzes throughout the entire week leading up to your event and after your event. And so this kind of walks students through everything they need to know about financial aid. We've created these resources we'll talk about, and these are all made because of requests from students. So best practices, next steps, and resources. Okay, so if you are working in a tier system for your students, I encourage you with your virtual financial aid events, follow up with your tier 1 students, because some of those students may be in your buildings already. So some of the schools I'm working with have tier 1 students who are coming physically to school in a limited capacity. And sometimes it means you can actually connect with them in person about their financial aid or maybe challenges they have. These regional district events have been much more attended than individual school events. I've done some individual school events, and we will get between 5 and 10 students, families that will show up for that event. when I do district-wide events, the overall numbers for each individual school rises. And so I've found that these district regional events not only increase your capacity because you're not doing multiple events, but it makes for a more well-attended, and occasionally, like it means you can also make it a bigger event. So for one of the events, the principal came and talked to the families for each of the breakout rooms. So the principals, we broke out the students into their breakout rooms. We did a main presentation, and then the principals did a welcome and talked to families why this is important. I encourage you to, if you feel comfortable sharing your educational journey with students, please do. When I talk to students, they always have this misconception of like, you must have gone straight to a university. I bet you were a straight A student. I'm like, I was the poster child of a 90s slacker. So no, that was not the case. But I did find my pathway through community college because they have open door admissions. And once I realized what I wanted to do, my grades went up. And so when I tell them like, actually, I went to community college for 2 years, found out what I was passionate about, got my bachelor's after that. They go, oh, I didn't know about that. So I encourage you. They think that these pathways are very direct, and we know there are so many different pathways. And I think that's important if you feel comfortable sharing to let them know. Really looking at your whole network for your communities is what I've found from other regions as well, is making sure that anyone who's serving students, if they want to be involved in this work, convene them together, have a convening. How can we do this work together? If you are struggling with getting translations, you can use the narration feature in PowerPoint and change it to other languages to be narrated into. So for our financial aid presentations, what I'm going to start doing, this is something, to be perfectly honest, didn't know about until 2 weeks ago. And so what I'll be doing is re-recording our PowerPoints of Financial Aid 101 in different languages, with the subtitles will be in different languages. But also, fun fact, if you have a presentation up like this, just one PowerPoint slide, you can actually have the narration going the whole time. So if I don't have a translator when I'm with a student, I will put a PowerPoint on just to hold a placeholder, and then we will use that as a way for that to translate the information to the student. Or the other thing is, when you're working with schools, is to see if they can provide translators themselves. That is another option. And then record as much as you can. Remember that when you're recording sessions, if your students talk during the session, their image will show up. And so you want to be careful on how you navigate that for recordings. But if you can re-record a clean one, if that's the case, recordings has been something that parents have really told me, like, oh, I can't make these events, but I can watch this on my lunch break. We know Wi-Fi is an issue. I live in a rural community. I've got 3 different options up right now just in case it fails me. I know those of you out there who are in rural communities probably have the same experience, where I feel like I can feel in Rochester when everybody has logged on because anything on my screen turns into what looks like Minecraft. And so if you can provide a list of free hotspots, Wi-Fi hotspots to your students and families, especially in Washington State, the Commerce website has a whole list of them. And that way they know where they can drive to. Other schools have done some pretty cool stuff. Like if they have a hotspot in their parking lot, their school, they're inviting people to come park in the parking lot and use the Wi-Fi there. I have a document of all of these links. And so if it's not letting you cut and paste from the chat, no worries. I am happy to send it out as one of the resources or get it put up on the page. I made a 1-pager of every resource. And if there's a resource that's not covered yet, I'm looking in the chat here, let me know, because we may already have it. And if we don't, I would love to make sure that we do. And then financially, it's not a one and done. We want to make sure that like we have our initial events. We know that December 1st is coming up. I know it doesn't feel like it, but to me, I mean, Costco's had Christmas stuff up since like August. So I feel like December is coming up. And so you want to make sure you're having those financial advising day events if you're a Washington State school. Before then, assess your initial efforts. You want to really assess your the barriers. Like that's a huge piece there, is assessing the barriers of your students, making sure you look at data to see who are you missing. You want to make sure you're doing this work from an equity lens. So who's missing from the initial completion effort, and how can you create ways to include them in the next effort that you have? So really this year, instead of like, we're going to have an event, and that's typically what we do for the year, is having an event, assessing your data, and pivoting to make sure all students are being served. Especially as schools may have more opportunities for in-class instruction, as we kind of are changing our instructional plans. That's part of that assessing and pivoting. When you're doing a financial aid event, if you're in Washington, don't use the term FAFSA nights. I know that's well-meaning, but I get sad phone calls from families every single year. that say my school had a FAFSA night, but when's the WASPA night? And they usually have missed deadlines. It's an equity piece, making sure you use financial aid as the financial aid event night as opposed to FAFSA. It's more inclusive, not just of the applications, but also of other processes for financial aid like scholarships. Don't assume which application is appropriate for students. We want to make sure that they determine for them and their families what application they're doing. Again, those Wi-Fi hotspots are really important, and I can send you guys that link as well. So for students, once they do their financial aid application, they want to make sure they put all their schools on that application, you guys. I had students like, I don't know why none of my schools got my financial information. I'm like, you put a bunch of random schools. Oh, I just picked some. I didn't really want to go there. I just knew I had to put something on there. If they've changed their schools, maybe they're going to one of these awesome Gear Up school campus tours and they're like, this is the school I want to go to. Once they've changed their mind about where they want to go, they have to add it to their financial aid application. And they also need to follow up with an admissions application. So they can get all the funding in the world, but if they don't get it sent to the right school and they don't get admitted, it's hard to do that. Applying for scholarships. Oh my goodness. Like I said before, I had multiple scholarship committees reach out to me and say, do you know what's going on this year? And I'm like, yeah, it's a thing called COVID. A lot of students are overwhelmed. And so they missed out on scholarship opportunities. But we know that sometimes when scholarships aren't awarded, that donors think there's no unmet need. And so they remove those scholarships. So we want to make sure students are applying for them. Use the washboard, use that Gear Up list. Gear Up has amazing resources, of course, but encourage them to use that as like an activity they can do. I did it every other week all through college, and it really helped me from having, I only had to pay $3,000 for my bachelor's, and for several quarters I didn't have financial aid. And part of it was that I worked full-time through my whole degree, and part of it was that I applied for scholarships every other weekend. And doesn't mean you're going to get giant scholarships every time, but man, $50, $500, $1,000 adds up over time. Keeping an eye out for those letters. These letters will start hitting for award letters in about March. So they should know about March and they can go from March all the way into the summer, depending on the school. Community colleges will award a little bit later. Some of the universities are going to award starting in March. So they want to make sure that they are meeting the school deadlines for financial aid, but also that if they have any problems with that, that they reach out to the college. Okay, scholarships for students who aren't US citizens. If they don't qualify for the FAFSA or the WASPA, all of these resources, and I will send these ones to you. All of these resources are for students. We know not every student is going to qualify for these funding sources, and I encourage you to work with those students. Instead of doing financial aid application activities, you're going to do scholarship activities. You know, identify 5 scholarships, and we're going to have you start writing your essays. The Beyond Dreaming Scholarship Guide is amazing. It has 45 pages of in-state and out-of-state scholarships that have no citizenship requirement. And also, they have a guide in there of things to be mindful of when you are applying for scholarships as an undocumented student. Washboard also has those. There are a lot of opportunities to find scholarships for students. We just have to make sure that we help them organize it. So I am a dork and I'm all about spreadsheets. I encourage making a spreadsheet, like a Google Doc, that helps them kind of organize that information and make an action plan. The Washington State Financial Aid Calculator. So the Washington State Calculator is kind of our replacement of the FAFSA Forecaster. For those of you who used it before, the FAFSA Forecaster, the way that people could assess their potential financial aid through the FAFSA is no longer available, and they do not have a deadline listed of when they'll have a new one. They're in the process of assessing what kind of tool they want to create. So it's going to be a little bit of time, but for Washington State, this is a great way for families to see when they say, I'm not going to get any financial aid, have them fill out the calculator. Of course, we know the only way you'll truly know is to apply, but this will give them a good idea. If you are a dork like me and you want to play in the application for financial aid, but don't want to fill out your own, use the demo site. The demo site is just a way for you to see a list of pre-created accounts, and then you can actually go into the FAFSA using that information through that link to actually go through the application. It's great for getting screenshots, but it's also great if you are like, I want to play through, what is it like for an independent student to do this application, things like that. Our student support module. So I said we worked really hard over the summer making some resources for you. This is one of them. We created student support modules that cover 12 different topics, and we are adding more topics as we go. It is all different things about financial aid. So on that financial aid advising week that I showed you, these are all the resources that were in there, or a good portion of them. Each module contains an infographic, a video that is, I tried really hard to make these 10 minutes or less. Students told me like, Miss Winstead, we know you like financial aid, but this is boring. Could you make these a little shorter? And I'm like, I'm sorry. So we took our long presentation and made them into small modules. I know if cute little corgis can't keep people's attention for more than 5 minutes, my love for financial aid probably won't either. So we've shortened them down. Each one has a Kahoot quiz or an activity, and then a resource that they can look at as well. If students are still trying to decide what they want to do, it's okay. It's a confusing world out there. Everything changes, but they can assess their interests and career opportunities through the College and Career Compass. And then College Knowledge. These are books that if you're a 12th year site or in Washington State and you want physical copies in English and Spanish, you can reach out and order these books. If you want digital copies, they come in English, Spanish, Vietnamese, Somali, and Russian. And these cover freshman through senior year, everything you want to know about college. I find that parents also love these. And so I encourage, like, they are designed more for students, but I have parents who will read through them because it walks them through all the things they'd want to know about financial aid in college. Another resource, if you are like, oh my gosh, financial aid advising day, what am I going to do? You're going to make an appointment with me. It's okay. Don't worry. We will sit down. I wish I could just send you all chocolate and that we could just hash this out together, but we will have an appointment and we will walk through the requirements of financial aid advising day. I am happy to help you look at what you're currently doing, look at the requirements of the bill, what we can provide, and help you come up with a game plan of how you're going to do this. Another resource is our junior senior workbook. This is designed by the amazing Beth Kelly. And so this is something you can also order as a 12th year site. If you are not a 12th year site, please feel free to reach out to me. We can make you one. And then our postcards. These come in 5 languages and tell students where they can get help for financial aid and what they need to have document-wise in order to complete their application. We also have Fostering College Knowledge. You can order these for your students. This is great for, I'm happy to send them out to anybody who will use them. Students who are youth in care, but also if you know someone who's working with foster parents, I'm happy to provide these. It just walks students through all their opportunities that are available to them 6th through 12th grade as a youth in care. And then our 12th year campaign site, we revamped the site so much. We heard your feedback. I know things were kind of hard to find. It is so much easier now and there are more resources on it. And so I'm really excited to provide this website for you guys with resources to help, not just with the financial aid advising day, but also other admissions activities as well. And then if you are like, oh my gosh, financial aid, I love it. I just want to keep learning about it. We will have a spring workshop where we will update and provide more resources to you. And just all you have to do is kind of, we haven't set the dates yet, trying to see, are we virtual, are we in person? We will have something though. If it's virtual, it'll be through Zoom. There will be clock hours available. And so we're really excited, but I'm hoping maybe possibly we'll be able to see humans together. And if not, we still will have the information for you. And so you can get more information and you can see last year's presentation and resources by going to our page at wasac.wa.gov/spring. And then finally, the keys. Okay, those of you who ordered keys, they are on the way. I'll be honest with this room. If you ordered keys, I got a little sick and I quarantined your keys with me because I was a little worried. I wanted to like super spread information about financial aid, but maybe not like the cold. Thank goodness it was just a cold, but the cold I had, I didn't know at the time. So your keys on a little bit of a delay and they're actually heading out now since they passed the quarantine time of like literally 2 weeks. I held them back. So your keys will be out if you requested them. I apologize. I immediately put those in the garage and I let them sit there. And so you will have those soon. If you haven't ordered a key though, oh my goodness. As a locksmith daughter, I feel like you cannot have too many keys. So this key is a flash drive that when you plug it in, it'll update the information every year with new information for that year. And so it automatically uploads anything that we add. We can also use this to push out information about changes to financial aid processes and policy. And then here's our contact information. Where you can find us on Facebook, Twitter. We also have a YouTube channel, and then our websites as well. I know that's a lot to have in 55 minutes, and probably since I talk a little bit fast because I get super excited about it, but does anyone have questions? And feel free, if you want to unmute yourself, you can unmute yourself. If you want to ask in the chat, you can ask in the chat. I'm happy to answer any of your questions on life, liberty, and the pursuit of higher education. It's just one of those things that I know that this is really scary right now, financial aid in a virtual world, but we're here doing it together. You're not by yourself. And also, if you look at your financial aid numbers and you're like, oh, we had a decrease last year. Listen, not one person by themselves is going to be able to do all of this work. You won't be able to change the financial aid numbers as one person. We have to work as a community and have statewide options. And that's what we're here to do. So if there's any way I can help you and support you in this work, those of you who know me, like I eat, breathe, and sleep this. I wish I could be there in person doing this with you. And until we can be, I'm here virtually. And as soon as they let us travel again, I will be back in my car up to your schools. But I absolutely don't want you to feel like you are alone in this. You have people who support you, and I'm happy to help.